Speaking Integrated Task 4, Reading, Listening, Speaking, Academic. There's good and bad news with this speaking task. The good news is, if you're familiar with the Reading, Listening, Speaking, Integrated Task 3, and you're familiar with how to organize that speaking task, you should also be able to organize this speaking task pretty quickly or easily because you're kind of doing the same thing. The bad news is this one focuses on academic type content, which means the vocabulary is going to be more difficult. The Speaking Integrated Task 3 focuses more on campus-related type readings and conversations, so maybe in that sense it's a little easier. What you will do on this type of speaking task. In this question, you will read a short passage about an academic subject. Next, you will listen to a short talk on that subject. You will then be asked a question about the information provided in the reading text and the talk. After you hear the question, you will have 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak. Now, let's take a look one more time. There's a very important point here. It says, you will be asked a question about the information provided in the reading text and the talk. And this is exactly why this is what's called integrated speaking tasks. So the question is going to ask you to combine or integrate the information from the reading and the listening. Your response will be evaluated according to the following criteria. A score of 4 demonstrates a superior ability to understand information or opinions in the two sources. In other words, you remember the most important points in the reading and the listening. Your speech organizes and draws requested connections between the information or opinions in the two sources, conveys the information, opinions, and connections clearly, fluently, and coherently. Again, this is where the integration comes in, the combining of the information. The speaking task is going to ask you about how the listening is related to the information in the reading, and you have to be able to show that connection in your answer. Obviously, you have to have good pronunciation. You have a barely detectable accent. Pronunciation is almost like that of a native speaker. Rare isolated mispronunciations, but no evident patterns of error. Now, you don't have to be this good. I don't want to scare you here, but if you are this good, you're definitely going to score really, really high. But even if you have some problems in your pronunciation, as long as those problems don't interfere in your meaning, I think you can still score pretty high. Your speech exhibits superior fluency in speaking skills. You're not stumbling or stuttering as if you're trying to find the right word to say. Using ideas supported by apt reasons and well-chosen examples, the speaker, you have coherently and logically organized your ideas. Remember that you are talking about two sources, a reading passage and a listening passage, and trying to show the connections. It can be very easy to present a disorganized type speech. So it's important for you to understand how to organize this speaking task so you score well on all these areas. When doing a reading, listening, speaking academic task, you should do the following. During the 45 seconds that you have to read the article, write down key points from the reading passage. Write down any examples given. Do not write incomplete sentences as you do this, but you should make sure that your notes are legible and accurate, for you will depend on them as you prepare a speaking response once you hear the prompt. While you listen to the listening portion of the speaking task, you should write down key points to which you're listening. Write down any examples given. Do not write incomplete sentences as you do this, but you should make sure that your notes are legible, for you will depend on them as you prepare a speaking response once you hear the prompt. Since you will be graded on the accuracies of your connections between what you have just read and listened to, you must take accurate notes, which will be used as you answer the speaking prompt. For me, it's easy. Take out a sheet of paper, right? Using a sheet of paper, some scratch paper, draw a line down the middle of the paper. On the left side of your paper, put R, reading. On the right side of your paper, put L, listening. So once the reading starts and you begin reading it, put the topic at the very top on that left part of your paper, and then write down 2 or 3 important points that relate to the reading. Then do the same thing with the listening. At the very top on the right hand of your notebook paper, you'll put the topic of the listening, and then underneath that you'll write 2 or 3 important points that relate to the listening. Do not give your own opinions in this type of speaking task. You need to summarize the reading passage and the listening task. Also, the examples that you give need to come from these 2 sources. You should not use examples from your own experience. Additionally, you should show how the listening passage is connected to the reading passage. Now, without making this statement here, you're going to be in trouble, because you are looking for 26 points or higher. You might be a doctor or a nurse or some type of a therapist, and your required score is 26. Now, I'm warning you right now. If you only summarize the 2 sources, but you don't show how they're related, you're probably not going to get 26 points out of 30. So let me repeat it again. Additionally, you should show how the listening passage is connected to the reading passage. To most effectively use the preparation time, you should plan your response. Think about the important ideas you want to convey in a simple, organized fashion. The most logical plan is to talk about the passage and then about the talk to which you've just listened. And once you talk about the listening passage, try to show how it relates to the reading passage. The next part of the video contains a sample speaking practice test for speaking task number 4, plus a sample response. This will kind of give you an idea of what to expect when you take the test, and more importantly, how you need to answer this type of question. In this question, you will read a short passage about an academic subject. Next, you will listen to a short talk on that subject. You will then be asked a question about the information provided in the reading text and the conversation. After you hear the question, you will have 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak. Now, read the following article about wind energy, and it was in a textbook in an environmental science class. You will have 45 seconds to read the article. Begin reading now. Now listen to a professor talk about wind-generated electricity. Right now, I'd like to add to some of the ideas that you read in your textbook. In more modern times in the United States, windmills were erected as the West was developed during the 19th century. Most windmills were used to pump water for farms and ranches. By 1900, small electric wind systems were developed to generate direct current, but most of these units fell out of favor when rural areas became attached to the national electricity grid during the 1930s. By 1910, wind turbine generators were producing electricity in many European countries. Recently, wind power has become an appealing alternative to fossil-based fuels, especially in countries with scarce petroleum and ample wind. According to the Danish Wind Turbine Manufacturers Association, there were 1,129 megawatts. Now remember that a megawatt, also known as MW, is 1 million watts of installed wind capacity spread out over 4,784 turbines in Denmark in 1997. This technology has potential for further use in the U.S. areas with the highest average amount of wind, such as mountain ridges and coastal areas, would produce the most electricity. According to the Department of Energy's website, now check this out, interesting statistic. North Dakota alone has enough energy from winds to supply 36% of the electricity of the lower 48 states. Now get ready for the question. The reading passage in the lecture discussed wind-generated electricity. First, describe two historical facts about wind-generated energy discussed in the reading passage. Second, describe at least three modern facts about wind-generated energy mentioned in the lecture. Your preparation time is 30 seconds. Your response time is 60 seconds. Pause the video to prepare your speech and to give your speech. The reading passage discusses how wind power was used in the past, and the listening passage explains the uses of wind power in modern times. The first fact mentioned in the reading passage is that wind power was used to propel boats along the Nile River thousands of years ago. The second fact mentioned is that windmills were used in China to pump water. This took place a few hundred years before Christ. Similar to the reading passage, the lecture discusses several interesting facts about wind power, except that the lecture concentrates more on modern times. First, the lecture points out that windmills were erected by 1900 to generate electricity. Second, it is learned that wind power is becoming an alternative to fossil-based fuels. Third, the lecture points out that wind power could be exploited even more. This talk is effective because the speaker demonstrates a superior ability to understand information or opinions in the two sources. Particularly, what will make this speech score higher than 26 is the speaker has pointed out that the information in the reading focuses on wind energy historically in the past, and then the listening focuses on wind energy more in the present day, in more modern times. And the writer, the speaker, has explicitly made that connection. That's very, very important. That's what we call integrating the two ideas. The speaker organizes and draws requested connections between information or opinions in the two sources, conveys the information, opinions, and connections clearly, fluently, and coherently. In other words, the speaker explains the two facts that were required by the speaking task from the reading, and as required by the speaking task, the speaker gives 3 important facts from the listening. And the speaker does this by using numerical first fact, second fact, and the first fact in the listening, second fact, and the third fact. That's what's called coherently presenting the information, making it easy to understand. The speaker has a barely detectable accent. Thus, the speaker exhibits superior fluency in speaking skills and doesn't stumble or stutter as if he's trying to find the right word to say. And the speaker uses ideas supported by reasons of well-chosen examples and has coherently and logically organized his ideas. Now, obviously, your speech doesn't need to be this good. I'm giving you a model, just showing you the characteristics of what makes a good speech for speaking task number 4. And to finish this part of for this video, I'm going to end with this note. Don't forget that it's not enough to simply summarize the information in the reading and the information in the listening, but you actually have to integrate the 2 sources together. So it's important that you do that.